So for me, being able to get German style heavy metal sounds, classic British ones, classic American ones, and modern American ones, and being able to get distortion sounds that are based on different tubes as well is just really impressive and really clever. So that's why I love this one in particular. If I was going to recommend any of the THRs, it would be this one.
Okay, so the primary difference between the THR-C and the THR-X that Rich is looking at are obviously the amp models. Now, this thing runs a deluxe, so it's a very clean, sparkly sound. You've got a Class A, which gives you a little bit more gain. So it's just kind of like a single channel, again, single channel Class A valve amp. US Blues, so you've got stuff like the Fender Bassman, bit more beef. And then Brit Blues, Vox-esque sound. I'm not going to say that it sounds like a Vox because it doesn't, but it's that kind of EL84 chime. And then you've got Mini. Now, I don't actually know what the Mini is modeled on, but it's the highest gain thing on this, and it actually sounds really badass. On the other side, you've got Bass, which is obviously for mimic and bass amp. Acoustic, which is actually really good. It's not an acoustic simulator, it's to simulate what a microphone in front of an acoustic does. And then of course you have flat, so it just flattens out the EQ, so you can just use it as a basic input to, say, Pro Tools or Cubase or whatever you're using it for. In terms of EQ and dials, it's very similar to the THR-X. You've got gain, master, which is your post volume. You've got bass, middle, treble, effects, so chorus, flanger, phaser, tremolo, same as on THR-X. You've also then got a delay and reverb section. This is where it's slightly different to the THR-X. You've got tape echo instead of just a delay, and you've got echo or tape echo with reverb, which they both sound really nice. You've also then got your guitar output and your USB aux output. Okay, so it's identical in every sense in terms of form factor and everything like that. Obviously this one is black and the THR-X is green. The only difference being the sounds of the amps that it can create and that little tape echo change there. I've set mine up as presets. I've set them up in no particular order. So let's just have a quick look through the settings and see what we can get out of this thing. Okay, so that's the deluxe sound. That's like the really sparkly, clean, and you can hear it. It sounds really bell-like as well. It's kind of... And I've also got the tape echo engaged, so that's what's giving it that. This button here, whilst also being the tuner button, will also enable you to set the tap tempo of the delay. Okay, then you have Class A, which has got a little bit more bite to it. This is where you start getting into the kind of crunchier, I say you start getting into it, you've only got one option that isn't really that crunchy, but this starts to get into the area where you get a little bit of kind of breakup. And then if you were to do some lead stuff on it, you could get kind of... You've then got US Blues, so this is where you start to get to the kind of American Fender Bassman style settings. I really like this, where you start to get into the much nicer, kind of creamier... already getting into the slightly more higher gain. It's difficult to explain. This amp doesn't really go from low to high gain. It's all fairly low gain, but each amp has different characters. So it's kind of, you can get high gain from the US Blues. You can get the same amount of gain out of the Brit Blues. It's just a different type of gain. So let's just try the Brit Blues one. also worth noting that I'm using humbuckers, not single coil. So that's your humbucker. And that's your single coil. So it really does vary massively on which pickup you use. It's a really responsive amp, so you can really clean it right up. It doesn't clean up so well on a humbucker, but that's just because the output's so high. And then you get to what's called mini, which is my personal favorite on this thing, and it's the highest gain that this amp has to offer. I think it's where it really kind of excels. I mean, yes, the THR-X is the super high gain model, but this has way more depth than that thing. So it's just kind of just... I'm using, just to go over the settings for that, humbucker on here obviously, gain right the way up, master pretty far round, echo and reverb, and just for the hell of it, I'm going to play along with something just so you can... So you can hear that it doesn't quite have the super high gain that Rich can get, but it still has enough to give you a really nice, thick lead sound. But even with single coils, you still get a really lovely kind of... So there's still a bit of, there you go, there goes the hum, obviously with a humbucker. It's a great little piece of kit. It's a lot more versatile than Rich's one, because Rich's one, you can back it right the way off, or you can not. That's pretty much it. This, you've got so much more scope. The other thing is that things like tremolos and stuff, super high gain tremolo doesn't sound that great. I mean, Green Day did it with Boulevard of Broken Dreams, but just something like medium to high gain. It's just something more traditional about having a crunchy amp with a tremolo setting than there is about having a super high gain amp with a tremolo setting. Okay, in summary, this is a great piece of kit. It's not a valve amp. It doesn't sound like a valve amp, but it sounds more like a valve amp than any of the other alternatives that are currently around. Now, Rich's argument is that you can get a great deal of gain out of such a small box. That's not difficult. There are programs out there that let us do that. TH2 sounds brilliant from Overloud. There's loads of Line 6 stuff out there. There's loads of Digitech stuff out there that sounds great at high gain. What's difficult to get at home is a big blues sound, because when you try and saturate power valves, the only way to do it is to turn the amp up. To saturate preamp valves is not difficult, because you can get high gain at low volume, even out of something like a 100-watt head. You can have it on quiet and you still have lots of gain. What you can't get is power valve saturation, which is what this thing does really well. Kind of the chime that you get out of saturating a power amp just beyond the point at which it can cope. If I was to recommend any of the THRs, I would recommend the original one, purely because you got so much choice. The clean on it was brilliant, the super high gain stuff on it was brilliant, everything ability. The crunch, when we first heard that, was just unbelievable. We've got a video of it, so go ahead over and find that. But because this video has been about the THR-C and the THR-X, out of the two, I'd have this one. Easily, it's got more versatility, you've got a much bigger scope for creating your own sounds, and best of all, it doesn't come with a free box of tissues. I would have this one. It's more versatile, you can create bigger soundscapes, it just sounds much more, it's more useful to me than having super high gain. I can get super high gain anywhere. You can't get that really nice crunchy blues stuff just out of anything. So, you gotta have the C.